The hosts of Two Bored Apes are not registered investment advisors. The podcast is for entertainment and informational purposes only. Nothing said on it should be construed as investment advice.
Two Bored Apes talking NFTs, DeFi, and some random stuff. Two Bored Apes talking NFTs, DeFi, and some random stuff.
Welcome to episode 53 of Two Bored Apes. I'm your host, Jamie. I'm here with my friend and co-host, Roy, and a special guest this week. We've got SimonSays here. Simon, how are you? We'll ignore Roy for now.
I'm doing great, thanks, and excited to be here.
Well, thanks for coming
feeling
on.
neglected?
Yeah, Roy, how are you? Why don't we talk to you for a
I'm
second?
I'm well too. Very excited to be here as well, Jamie.
Okay, so Roy, would you like to jump right into news of the week or talk to Simon about why he's here? What do you want to do first?
Let's talk to Simon. I'm sorry for
Okay.
interrupting.
Simon, what are you doing here? Because usually this is just me and Roy.
Indeed. So I'm here both as a generative art collector. I'm in Grailer's DAO and Art Blocks community and do a bunch of stuff on fxhash and Tez as well. So been a long time listener.
We can see a little bit of ringers behind you, in fact.
Yes, there is a ringers behind me. There's a meridian over one shoulder. There's even a squig and an IO frame there over my back shoulder that I got in the mint back in May. But my day job is with something called Crypto for Charity, which is a zero fee platform to help people donate crypto assets directly to charity. And so I reached out to see if y'all would be interested in helping me spread the good word, and here I am.
Nice. I mean, yeah, that's something that we're interested in spreading. Charity is good, right? I'm wearing a shirt that says donate.
Charity is good.
Although the shirt is about donating blood, not money to charity, but the same concept, right? Helping others out or whatever.
Absolutely.
All right, let's get into news of the week, and we can talk more about Crypto for Charity organically a little bit later.
Sounds great.
So the merge just happened. We talked about it a little bit on the last episode, but the level of smoothness. Now, it just happened?
It had just happened. Last recording, it was like, I think that night or the day after, 12 hours.
Yeah. So now we've had like a full week since then, and it's gone. Nothing has broken. People are searching, and we can't find anything that has stopped working after, which is pretty amazing. So that seems...
ETH price has gone way down.
That
not great. Not great.
but in terms of the functionality and all the protocols and stuff, it's gone amazingly smoothly.
Yeah, it's I guess it was a classic buy the rumor, sell the news event, but I mean it's hard to know
it
because
really hasn't
everything's
gone down
tanking
enough, though. You know what I mean? It's like it's only an average week where it's gone down a little.
All of the markets are tanking.
Yeah, it's hard to even attribute it to that, as far as I'm concerned, because assets all over the globe are just going down in price lately.
Yeah, we're in a pretty bad state, all in all. But I don't know, Simon, what do you think about how the merge went, and maybe also like ETH versus Tez and other blockchains, because obviously you're very active on both. And as an extension of that, like one of the biggest selling points for Tez was it's a green blockchain, and now it doesn't have that comparatively to ETH. Obviously, it's still a green blockchain, but what are your thoughts?
A lot of people bringing that up. Sorry to jump in here, but people were going like, this was the value prop of Tez, and now ETH does it. So what's the reason for Tez? But it's almost like you could reverse that, right? What's the value proposition of ETH being proof of stake? We've already got it on Tez. I don't know. It seemed like
I don't know. I mean, it seems like community is the big difference, right? It's like Tez has this really vibrant artist community. It's almost like more of a bohemian scene, right? And like it's
definitely, and
you're seeing more crossover, and so I think we'll see even more of that, right? I imagine we'll see some of the bigger guns from the Tez side who haven't yet done big long form ETH drops are in some cases already doing it, right? So like Iskra Lichkova is doing part of the Bright Moments drop in Mexico City coming up in November. I would love to see and figure at some point we see a Zancan drop. I've no idea.
He does have some NFTs like on Foundation and Original Tree or whatever.
And they're Rapture captured. He had that edition on Verse that he sold. But and so I've got to imagine that becomes more likely. But the attractiveness of a much cheaper, much more experimental space for artists to explore is not negated just because ETH is now more environmentally friendly, right? But I certainly would imagine. I imagine we see more crossover, and I imagine that over time it becomes sort of less about. It just becomes less salient of a point. But on the merge, which is your first question, super excited. It was always. I always had comfort, even as an environmentalist. Like I used to work at Greenpeace, so I think I have some bona fides there. And like I was always comfortable using ETH because from jump, switch to proof of stake was on the roadmap, right? So even when it got bumped, it was always a transitory, like, okay, so it's one more year of additional emissions, which yes, not great, but in the grand scheme of things, not a price I'm willing to pay for the innovation we're getting in the space. And now here we are.
Yeah, I think it got pushed. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think on the piece about Zancan coming over, I think one of the hesitations he might have had was the environmental impacts. And there are, I'm sure, a lot of artists who chose Tez for that reason. And now it's that barrier has been evaporated. So I do imagine we see more crossover.
I should make it clear. It's entirely speculation. I have no idea. I have absolutely no knowledge that Zancan is doing a drop.
Yeah, you heard it first. Zancan is doing a 1K generative drop. He's the next Upload.
This is really why
artist.
We got you here.
Exactly. Newsbreaker here.
To speak to the difference in the communities, I feel like the community that you see on Tez is really sort of doing the thing that we use sort of as the marketing for NFTs in. It's about creators, and there's these royalties, and it's about direct connections between the collector and I feel like on F that has sort of been a base layer on which all this financial interest has been layered on top, whereas on Tezos it really is just this for the most part. There's some back and forth or whatever, but it's still very pure to me when I look at what's going on Tezos, whereas Ethereum is this whole other thing, and there's more maybe transparency or whatever about financial interest and people going, I'm buying this art because I can sell it for more later, whereas on Tezos it really feels like people are collecting art to collect art.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, it's much easier to collect art when the art is $10 or $100 than when it's $10,000, right?
Yeah.
You sort of,
we
feel more of a
about
need
this
for
before
that return.
too, because on F there is art that you could collect for that, but collecting a $10 piece of art and spending $7 on a transaction fee, it just doesn't really work out all that well. But again, on Tezos, you can have that same price, but with a negligible transaction fee, and so it's totally cool. And I mean, if you look at probably all three of our collections on Tezos, there's tons of evidence of that being totally true, where we have tons of pieces that were bought for 50 cents to $3 or whatever.
Absolutely. I mean, actually, on the community thing. So one, just like in the interest of weaving in the charity stuff, right? So this week I decided that I'd see if we could get any energy for basically a charity auction of people donating pieces of art on Tez for Hurricane Fiona relief funds, right? Which is devastating Puerto Rico and the Caribbean right now. And I had tried something similar on ETH in the wake of the Uvalde school shooting to benefit Everytown for gun safety. And that was like, there were a few artists who donated pieces. So Matto and Ixnay and Raven were part of them. I feel like I'm leaving someone out and I apologize. And a couple of collectors donated pieces. But generally there was it's a pretty tepid response, I'd say. Like not that many people participated, not that many people. It then took a while to sell some of the pieces. Whereas on Tez, it's just 50 some pieces donated in the space of a day. Marcelo Soria Rodriguez is the Entre Tiempos and Contrapuntos artist, created a custom one of a hurricane oriented one of one that he donated. Zach Lieberman donated one of one. A bunch of collectors put in pieces. And I feel like it's that sort of less of a tie to the financialization of it means people are just like, yeah, cool. Here's a nice, disjointed and disoriented, hope it gets something good. It's a really nice, I feel like it's more, ETH is much more community oriented than BTC, but then I feel like Tez is much more is in many ways more community oriented than ETH.
Yeah,
I
or
definitely
at
feel
least the Tez community is sort of singular in a way, whereas there's all these kind of different communities on F that have varying goals, whereas Tez is really, again, sort of that thing that we act like NFTs are all about when we're talking about the good side of it.
Yeah.
I think it's a lot of it is just it's smaller but it's more intimate, and it allows for when one person has an idea like yours, which is fantastic, to just sort of rally a lot more support and get the eyeballs on it and get the support behind it, because it's more close, like tight knit. And I think that on ETH, one of the issues, I guess quote unquote issues, is that because it's so large and sprawling, it's harder to capture that attention. And like every day or every few days, I hear about like a really awesome charity initiative project on ETH. But it's almost like there's too many of them, which is a little unfortunate that is the mindset that people have. But attention is just really difficult to come by. Whereas if there's not that many, it's sort of just like, if there's not that many, it's a lot easier for people to just focus in on.
Yeah. Just to play a little bit of devil's advocate here, though, if you look at some of the really big projects on F, they've just baked charity into it and done excellently. Art Blocks being a good example, and Bored Ape Kennel Club had a bunch too. I forget which, but then they also did to the Jane Goodall Foundation with the ApeCoin drop. So I just want to put it out there that there's also some
Art Blocks
work.
Art Blocks is absolutely a leader in.
It's amazing
in this, and I think that they've created kind of they've set a frame, I think, in which a lot of other projects operate, where it's like, oh, if we're getting a bunch of money, we should donate a chunk of it, right? Yeah. And they weren't like the only project or the first project to do that necessarily, but they definitely went big with it in a way and mandating it
happening too.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think I remember reading they donated like $50 million in charity.
Yeah.
And this was probably 6 months ago that I heard this. Like Jamie said, it just keeps going as well, and it's just incredible.
Yeah, totally. And they also do stuff for staff. Like each staff member is given like a pot of money to direct to charity, as well as whatever happens through the drops.
That is cool. Let's move on to some of the other stuff we had for news of the week. How about this MoMA news, right? Why don't you take that away?
Yeah, I mean, that seems like the natural transition. I think it might have happened towards the end of last week, but it's still like relatively recent. And MoMA, basically Museum of Modern Art in New York City, announced that they were planning to or already started auctioning off a few pieces, estimating to raise about $70 million. And were like very strongly exploring the possibility of like getting NFTs effectively with that money and curating a digital collection, which is,
I think they use the word digital
news.
More rather than NFTs.
Yeah,
to
digital
not
art.
Make it.
But you can read through the lines.
NFTs.
Yeah.
And I think they also maybe specifically name checked Renoir and Picasso as things that they were selling, but I didn't actually dig too deep into it. But I think I remember seeing those names. So that's pretty big deal, and probably some fun speculation for a lot of people. We saw, for instance, if we want to just talk about speculation, someone swept like 5 Fidenzas yesterday. So
5 today and 3 yesterday, I think.
Something a lot recently. And if you wanted to say MoMA's getting into digital art, it's a very logical guess that Fidenzas would be part of it, as it's.
All right, so you heard it here first. Zancan is dropping a 1K collection, and MoMA just swept 8 Fidenzas.
I saw there was a Twitter thread yesterday that someone did that, like, using some ENS names that tied it back to like a family office, like a family investment office.
I did see that. Yeah,
someone has. Which
my speculation was that people are speculating. The buyers, I definitely don't think is MoMA. It's people trying to front run MoMA. But realistically, if they're trying to get into digital art, the generative art specifically, let's say, because my expertise outside of generative art for digital stuff is less so, but that is the premier collection. Maybe someday soon Garden Monoliths could be it or something, but it's the collection that people reference. So it's logical to think that if they were going to get into the space, that would be something that they would look to acquire.
I've seen some interesting speculation that like they're likelier to start with one-of-one art versus generative. And even there, I wonder if they start with, like, do they start with a ringer, or do they start with one of Dimitri's pieces on super rare or something? It's kind of an interesting question.
I also saw that maybe they're planning on like collaborating with some digital artists and getting new pieces made for them. I feel like I have all these little pieces that I saw of it, but I didn't actually read any of the full articles.
It is my wife. So my wife is actually an art historian and works at the Yale University Art Gallery, and she's mentioning that that MoMA has a pretty aggressive like de-accessioning program. So like they tend to sell art a little bit more than the average museum.
Okay.
And so I wouldn't. It's not like it's not like they're selling their Picassos for Denzas, and that's the story. But it's definitely like meaningful, right? And they had last year. They had a like Web3 associate job listing posted, right? And they definitely are. They're a museum that tries to stay more on the edge of collecting than many. And so I think it's a really
museum of modern art.
Right? It's right there in the name.
It's right there in the name.
Yeah.
I'm curious to know if they would have a preference for going for sort of your still images like your Fidenzas, or they'd be going like as equally open to getting something like an X copy, which very much needs to be on a digital frame and animated.
Well,
and
I was there. I don't know when was I in New York? A couple months ago.
A year ago.
No, it was sooner than that. But anyway, I mean, I went to a video exhibit where basically this specific exhibit was an artist who would film various pieces of nature or whatever, but sort of so zoomed in as to make it seem almost like an abstract piece. But again, it was filmed and over the course of time, so they're fine with doing projectors and screens and all that stuff. It's not outside of the realm of what they're already doing. So, you know, if they're going to get into the newer stuff, my mind pings a lot of ways. But I've also just been with like this QQL stuff. I've been thinking a lot about what is the point of generative art, and like, you know, we've all talked about and seen how interesting it is when you have these, what is the word, emergent traits and stuff that are very rare and surprising to even the creator, right? But then you have this QQL thing, and I'm sorry that I really did veer off from the moment talk, but now with this QQL thing, people are able to curate them themselves, and ultimately, if everybody is searching for these grails, and then we have the whole collection, let's say, is of them, the actual collection will not be indicative of what the outputs to the algorithm for the most part is. So that's, I'm sorry for getting off topic here.
No, I think,
but it does go back a little bit to what are they going to look to get into? You know, what about this new stuff is interesting to them? Do they want to show the stuff that looks like old stuff but is made with these new tools, or do they want to go, here's the stuff that this new technology allows that you could never do with a paintbrush? You know, that's sort of where it connected.
I think that's exactly the question to me, right? Is like, do they, because I can see, I've had conversations with academic art folks who have said things like, you know, I want to see generative art that really takes advantage of the medium, right? That is, so that in my mind points to, it's not gen art, but to an X copy. It points to phase. It points to Zach Lieberman, Nicholas Assoon, that kind of thing. Versus like, you know, is it like, oh my God, I can't believe an algorithm produced this, right? And that to me is more the Denza, the Ringer, the archetype, the off script, whatever, right? And yeah, I mean, that's the $1 billion question. I mean, probably more than $1 million probably to be made. I'm guessing that
17 million.
I'm guessing the answer right to that. But
yeah, you know what else is interesting too is like if you took even within one collection, for instance, you look at Fidenzas, a lot of those could very easily be replicated by an artist. Tyler himself has painted a couple of them.
Sure.
But then if you look at like the micro uniforms, now you're looking at something that you could not do with the old tools. And so you have within this one collection now, you kind of have both of those different things, which is sort of interesting. It seems like we've already kind of transitioned into the generative art.
Generative art. The other thing we had on News of the Week was CoolCats has a new CEO. I put that on there because I didn't have much else to put in the News of the Week. It happened. I don't know much about it. We can move on.
I know nothing about it. I think I heard it was maybe happening, but
yeah,
good for them.
Yeah.
Good for them. Yeah, yeah.
They're still very cute.
They are cute. Not as
Not
cute
the
as Pudgy
CEO. I don't know
Penguins,
anything about
I
the
think.
CEO. I'm talking about the cool cats themselves.
The CEO of CoolCats is
The
cute.
CEO may or may not be cute. Yeah. It's not up to me to say.
All right, let's jump straight into, I mean, we already were into art blocks and generative art in general.
Yeah, let's talk about generative art for a change.
Yeah, we haven't done that yet. The most recent curated drop on art blocks, Act of Emotion by Kelly Milligan. Simon, I know you said you got a couple. Jamie, did you get any?
I bid on some in the aftermarket. Bid way too. There was one that was listed at like a little bit over or around 3 times floor. That was like beautiful, and I vaguely thought about buying it, but instead I just bid, and then I checked 2 hours later. Somebody much smarter than me had paid the asking price.
Punk 6529 comes along.
It wasn't him, but somebody smarter than me.
So I don't have any. So Simon, you're the only one who has them. Yeah, well, like maybe let's describe the project. How would you describe it, Simon?
A good example of one that harkens back to traditional art because it very much looks like brush strokes, specifically ones generally with multiple colors on the brush.
Yeah, I mean I said this one yesterday that it kind of reminds. There's that art blocks drop from, was it Maddie Mariansky? Something like there's brush pops, right? It's kind of like if brush pops got an MFA in my mind. Like it's sort of, it feels more. It's very similar. It's deeply painterly, right? It's like literally like a big thick brush, either making sort of continuous strokes across a canvas or making big kind of dabs across the canvas with textured, what looks like giant paint strokes of different colors and contrasting backgrounds and stuff. And it looks, I think it's a really interesting take on the digital physical, kind of looks like a painting, kind of doesn't. I think Kelly Milligan's great. Like he's got Terroir is a really nice series that was dropped on gen.art by him earlier. He's got a bunch of stuff on Tez, and just like generally good person, based in New Zealand. Which, neither here nor there, but generally the New Zealanders I've met are nice.
It's a great country too. I love that country. Yeah.
Do you guys, is there not really what do you call a rivalry with New Zealand and Australia?
Oh, there is. It's like America, Canada. It's like all the traditional ones.
Who's Canada? New Zealand?
New Zealand, obviously.
Okay.
they might disagree, but yeah, I mean, certainly by size, I think it's like sort of proportionally, it's like approximately a 10x multiple or so on population.
Yeah.
But I think it's a lovely drop, right? I think it's visually very appealing. I think there's definitely a like floor and ceiling bifurcation of like there are some really incredible outputs. Then there's like a bit of a middle ground of really lovely, and there's a lot that are like, yeah, that's nice. And so I think you're seeing that, right? You're seeing a bleed out on the floor of last I looked, it was like 0.4 something when it had dropped, when it cleared at around 0.61 or so. So, not great, but also it didn't go out super high. So there's not so far for it to bleed out, and hopefully it comes back.
I want to talk about QQL because I've been looking at it a lot, and then
everything.
No, not everything.
We're going to get to
it all comes back to QQL.
Hold on.
If you look in our show notes,
totally on topic.
We got Active Emotion, and then we got Take Wing, and then we got QQL.
Okay, but listen, Simon's talking about the floor to ceiling stuff, and again, this goes back to specifically what QQL is designed for. And I was actually looking at the interview with Dandelion and Tyler Hobbs yesterday. Looking at the interview, I was reading the interview, and Tyler was specifically talking about how with, for instance, something like Fidenza, traditional generative art, you really have to be careful that the worst or ugliest outputs still look pretty good to you, because those are going to get minted. Whereas QQL, he specifically is allowing them, in his mind or whatever, to not worry about them being unattractive so much, because those ones aren't going to get minted, and because it's this collaborative effort with the collector. It's really just, it's very interesting. Roy looks like he's ready to mock me.
No. I'm just like,
at
at some point, and I was like, when we got to explain what QQL is, because you've just jumped right in twice.
Did we not talk about it at all last time?
We might have touched on it last time, but
okay,
this is a new episode. Maybe
somebody besides me talk about it.
I don't think you mentioned it last
Roy
time.
gets bothered every time I talk about it.
No, Jamie, you're the expert. What is QQL?
It's an upcoming generative art project.
I'm sorry.
I quit. This is now one Bored Ape.
It is literally, you sold your Bored Ape.
That's true. The name of the show is still literally Two Bored Apes, though. Anyway, it's an upcoming generative art project from Tyler Hobbs and Dandelion. It's already a collaboration between the two of them, but the thing that's different about it from basically all other generative art projects, I don't want to say all for sure, but most, let's say, is that rather than minting a random piece from the algorithm that, uses your wallet address and transaction hash to just run through the algorithm and give you an output, he's releasing the algorithm with a really slick web interface for collectors to deal with ahead of time. And what he's actually auctioning off is mint passes that never expire, and people can explore the algorithm indefinitely on the website and then mint a specific output that they like. And it's very interesting, and in a lot of ways flips generative art on its head. So I've just been looking at it a lot, thinking about it a lot, and wanting to talk to others about it a lot. And now I have you two here, and every time I try to talk about it, Roy makes fun of me. So I'm not getting what I want. But it seems very interesting to me, just the way it changes things up. So I want to hear what you guys think. Have either of you explored the algorithm much?
Yeah, a little bit. I was like a day late after everyone, and I was looking at them and getting jealous. And then I just realized as well, you can queue up like 400 renders, so you can just set it to random and then just come back and
I told you got to connect your wallet to be able to do that. And like, this sounds suspicious.
Well, I thought you were trying to scam me. It's just like Jamie's like, go to this website, connect your wallet, and anyway, I've explored it a little bit, not a lot yet. How about you, Simon?
Yeah, I've explored a fair bit myself, not a ton, but then so Grailer's DAO is this collecting community that I believe Zeneca, you and I are both in, and the main like Grailer's Cafe page of our Discord has been, I'd say, like 80% QQL outputs for the last 48 hours. So I feel like I've explored it by sort of even more just by virtue of like seeing what other people are pulling out.
Yeah. And
like, to me, like I like it. I think some of the outputs are really nice. I think it's more interesting to me, honestly, for the reasons that Jamie was flagging. It's like the dynamics of the auction and the mint pass and rarity over time, right? Like what does that even mean here? And like, what will secondary look like? Because there's really no reason to ever pay more for a minted piece than for a mint pass, because you always have the potential to create something you'll like more with a mint pass. And so like, how will that play out over time? Do we wind up with something where 10 years from now a mint pass is absolute unobtainium? Or do we wind up with something where in 10 years from now there's still 500 that are unminted because everyone left them like unwrapped Pokemon cards that now there's so many of, they're not actually that valuable or something. I don't know. Like all those dynamics are fascinating to me, and the algorithm's like, it's cool, it's nice, it's I don't know, but that's where my head's going.
It's also like I think we've kind of seen some of these mechanics with other projects, and it's like, oh, that's pretty interesting, but this one is freaking Tyler Hobbs, so like there's so much attention, there's so much. And the algorithm is absolutely beautiful.
Because I actually can't think of any. I mean, for
Not
like
off the
some
top of my
profile
head.
picture projects, there's ones where you can
Well,
like change traits
so
and stuff. But
so Cverso has done a bunch of drops on Tezos, circling back, and actually they have one. There's one today or maybe tomorrow with fxhash, the guy who did Bent, where they allow you to. There will be like two main traits, like palette and composition, or something like that, and then you have like X number of resets.
Okay.
So it'll be like switch trait, switch trait, switch trait, and kind of see each output, and then decide to mint the one you like. But that's like a step in the direction of QQL. But that is still time bound. There's still only X number of mints, so like you can't take forever because someone else is going to mint before you. And there's only 8 or 16 or 24 switches, right, that you can do. It's not this like infinite into the future thing.
Yeah, so that's the same sort of flavor, but the degree of what
I don't think we've
with
seen
this
something to
QQL
this
is
degree.
huge.
There
Totally
was a
different.
platform genetic chain around last year which had elements of this as well, where I think you would be like in quote unquote mint a piece, and then you have it in your wallet, and you can go into their website and then like change parameters to change like certain traits or like brush size or like if it's animated speed, and then you like lock it in and confirm it, and then it's like permanent, and but you have like forever to play around with it. And again, it's like elements of it, but it's not quite as comprehensive as QQL. And then you have like the things like CloneX vials or Renga black boxes, where it's like they're available forever, and you can burn them or open them and get something new and around them. But and that supply dynamic piece is there, which is interesting. But again,
does the analogy? I've never had an ape or anything in the Yuga ecosystem other than some other these lands briefly. But like, does the analogy to the serum hold, or does that not quite work?
In terms of supply, the dynamics seem very similar. In terms of everybody knowing that it's just this deflationary supply of something that has a large level of value to it. There's a lot of similarity there.
But like it's it doesn't have that randomness element aside from the M3 serum, which was like people know what they're going to get. But with like the M1s and M2, you would just get like the mutant version of your ape, and so you know exactly what the traits are going to be.
There was also the thing with the serums where eventually they would, like the ApeCoin and other dudes would be the immediate examples. They were going to reward mutants, but they were not rewarding serums. So by having a serum that was not used, you were literally losing some of the inherent value that was within it, whereas no such thing necessarily is going to happen with the QQL mint passes. Although I think they kind of hinted at some stuff, but it's certainly much less so because it is really a pure art project in a way that Yuga stuff is not.
The one thing that I know Dandelion said was that they would have like day one as a trait. So all QQLs that are like that you queue up and mint on the 30th will have a trait that only X number will have, and then they'll have like time epochs as traits, but it won't be like each day as its own trait forever. It'll be like ranges of time at some point.
They also did specifically say that they're just sort of excited about the concept of seeing how long people wait and all of that stuff. I am as well.
Yeah, I'm just staring at them right now. I'm on my screen.
The Berlin palette is like right up my alley. That's almost all the time I've been generating them. I've just been locking in the Berlin palette and then playing around with a lot of the other parameters. They also had an error initially with like the spiral. I guess
lack of spiral.
Yeah, the direction spiral trait was not working correctly. So the first like 500,000 that people were generating, none of the spirals worked correctly, and they had to fix that.
Yeah, it's the sheer number of like outputs that people are looking through is also just kind of mind blowing, right?
It's crazy.
Like literally millions are going to have been looked at. It reminds, so there's a collector who goes by 0x Techno who did this contest
Screens.
around out of bounds screens, which inspired this similar like exploring the full algorithm space. And this is like that, but if it was Tyler Hobbs, who's who's asking you to do the thing.
Yeah, but what's so fascinating about this is that you're sort of exploring that out of bounds stuff, and the only stuff that's in bounds is the most interesting stuff that gets found in this sort of out of bounds exploration, which again, it's very interesting. And I want to bring back a point I brought earlier, where it just seems like if you think of whatever generative art collection you want to, Fidenza, Ringers, whatever, QQL, and you think in your mind's eye, what does an average piece or what does this collection look like? I think in QQL, the actual NFTs are not going to be almost at all indicative of what the outputs for this algorithm really, on average, look like, which is very strange. And it'll be interesting to see if anybody really bucks that trends and mint some ones that look like what, to me, an average QQL tends to look like, rather than searching for these ones that have, sort of very distinct looks of the Alpine Valley being sort of the most famous one, I think, that we've seen so far.
Yeah. I think it's interesting to like the kind of corollary to that is that the average actual minted QQL might have very little relationship to the next one over. And I think one of the things that really defines, in my eye, a quality long form generative art series is some measure of cohesion within the outputs, right? It's like a ringer is a ringer, even if there's this incredible output sort of diversity. Similarly, Denza, like you look at any Denza and you're like, yeah, that's a Denza. And I think it's going to be really interesting to see if that's actually true for QQL in the end.
Yeah, I agree. I'm sort of always looking. Also, before I even say that, you said long form generative art. I wonder if it's worth us as people in the generative art community, not just us specifically, thinking of a different term for whatever this is that's being done with QQL, because it's very different from what we think of as that long form generative art because of all this stuff we're talking about. But yeah, in general, with a long form project, I like to see that all the pieces are sort of identifiably of this, but it's not just the same where, there's maybe a little zoomed in or zoomed out or like different palettes. You like to have that variety, but also that sameness.
What do you guys think so this is a Dutch auction that will start at 50 ETH and drop to 2 ETH. It's a true Dutch auction.
Will it drop to 2 ETH though, Roy?
Yeah, theoretically.
Maybe.
What are your predictions for where it mints out at?
We talked about this privately earlier, and I guessed
you said like 14?
I don't have much information to go on. It just kind of, it was a number I picked. It seemed like less than 15, but over 10. I don't know, 14. And you had guessed maybe 10 or 11, I think, Roy.
I said 10 and a half. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's so hard to know.
It's
such a cop out, but it's so Incomplete Control is the last drop that Tyler Hobbs did with a similar
50 supply.
So it was 100, but there were 50 mint passes that were in the Dutch auction, and then there was X number of raffled where you could buy it at half of resting. And this was at a time when the Denza floor was like 130 or something like that.
Yeah, market
back
was
in October.
Richer place.
Yeah, market was on the downswing, but we hadn't quite accepted it yet. And I thought there was a reasonable chance that the Dutch auction was going to go out at 250, right? Because it was it's only 100 supply, successor to Denza, a 2x multiple on floor from Denza seems reasonable. For that reason, I didn't have a chance in hell of didn't think I had any shot of playing in it, and so that's actually how Grailer's DAO came to be. Is a bunch of people thought that, and then we sort of teamed up to buy some. But it's entirely possible that given bear market conditions and the sort of uncertainty of the dynamics here, this goes lower than this goes 7, 8, 5. I don't know. But at the same time, I would not be shocked at all if it winds up going out at 14. I think if it does go out at 14, there will definitely be a point in time at which the mint passes drop below mint. Like I don't think it, in my mind, sustains that floor after an initial peak of activity. I think if it gets lower,
certainly if the market
potentially
continues the way it does, there'll have to be people that were trying to flip accepting losses. I'd agree with that.
Yeah.
I agree as well that like the market is bearish and there's not that much liquidity, it seems, out there. So I just quickly looked up OpenSea's daily volume, and so just rough math, if it sells out at around 10 ETH, that's more than the entire daily volume of OpenSea, like for any of the recent days.
I also saw that that Fidenza sweep we touched on earlier was like, somebody said 75% of the daily volume or something like that for the day.
There was a day a few days ago where like there were 23 total art blocks sales in like a 24-hour, like 23 total art blocks tokens were sold across
on all
markets.
markets.
At least OpenSea and Archipelago, I think. It was like, oh my.
Yeah.
It's slow.
I mean, it is not totally fair to compare OpenSea to OpenSea a year ago, because there really are a lot more competitors that are each having chunks of their volume or whatever, but there is still a down and to the right thing happening.
We're still in a bear market.
Yeah. Yes, very much so. Take Wing?
Yeah, Take Wing. So this is a fxhash project by Melissa Wiederrecht.
We looked up where that last name was from a couple episodes back.
Jamie was obsessed with where it was from.
What was the answer? German or Dutch?
I don't remember that well. I think it was Swiss was the most likely, but I can't actually remember. The amount that he's gotten like going on about QQL this episode, he was going on about that last episode or whenever that episode was. Anyway, she did Sudfa on Art Blocks. Came out.
Yeah. And she's done, I think, a few things on fxhash now, and Take Wing being one of them today. And Simon, again, you have a couple. I saw them and I was like, these are beautiful. So I'm definitely going to go shopping for them later. But do you know much more about them?
Yeah, I mean, they're part of this in-person exhibition in Berlin that's been happening all week with something called Vertical Crypto. And there was like a Zancan 505 auction that was sort of an earlier era or stage of that. They did these like 3-day chunks. And so this was part of that. So I know there's like an in-person component in Berlin with it. Like there's a show of them there. Are you at home, Roy? You should go.
I'm sorry, in Munich, so it's like close.
Oh, you're in Munich. Oh, sorry. Yeah. Not
close enough.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I thought you were Berlin rather than Munich, but not.
A lot of people make that.
Don't pop up for a show. But she's had these. So she's had 3 fxhash drops in a row that there are this interesting story over time, right? So Solitude was a kind of, it's almost like a blurry landscape where you have sort of similar palettes as you see in Take Wing, but clearly you're looking at a kind of abstracted landscape, right? And then she did Spaghetti a few weeks ago, which had a kind of horizon split, but was like way more like Pollocky abstraction from the landscape. And then here, Take Wing seems like a step further and a step more evolved from Spaghetti of like, it's still this very like painterly and it looks totally seems like the kind of thing that you could go into a museum and see on the wall, in painted. And like, related to our earlier conversation. And like, I think they're really lovely.
They are.
I was a big fan.
I'm just looking up Solitude now because I hadn't seen it before. I love them. They're really, really beautiful. And relatively cheap, like 100 Tez.
Like 100-ish, yeah. That's like basically they've hung around mint price for a while now, which I feel like, I don't know, maybe there's a run on her at some point. And Spaghetti did really well, so that one minted out at like, I think it got down to 50, and then it pretty quickly got up to about 300. It's only a series of 100 pieces, and like enough.
Looks like the
of the bigger folks
right now.
Yeah, enough of the bigger folks got a few, and there you go. But I'd give that one a look. It's fun.
Yeah, fxhash is amazing. It's just there's so much incredible art on there. I mean, the problem is sometimes it feels like there's too much incredible art on there, and it's like difficult to know what to collect. But it's, I mean, it can definitely be overwhelming. But one of the nice parts is you just go and browse and be like, oh, that looks nice, and pay 1 Tez for it and 20 Tez.
Because it's such a small financial decision for so many of them, you don't have to necessarily put in research or whatever before making a purchase. Whereas if you want to buy an Art Blocks curated piece, even if you're at the very bottom tier, it's an amount of money that most anybody should think once or twice about. Whereas literally on fxhash, if you're in a first world country, and you have enough disposable income to be doing anything in crypto, you can buy a ton of this stuff without really having to think twice about it. And so you don't necessarily have to like you're sort of alluding to, know what to get. You can just get what you want to get.
That Tez does have a tendency to just fly right out of your wallet, though. Pretty much as soon as you load it in. Like pretty much any amount of it, it's like I'll find something to spend it on. Very quickly.
The other thing too is that we're talking about these low ones. There's all the levels in between low and very, very expensive. So if you want to, you can also make financially reckless decisions buying on fxhash as well. It's not all cheap.
Garden monolith floor, 28.5 thousand Tez. So that's like, I don't know, $40,000 or something. Speaking of, it's probably a good segue. Simon, you were in New York City for Zancan's event there, or an event that Zancan was at.
And so I was one of the lucky 6 to get one of those the Zancan Lush Temple New York 1-on-1.
That's amazing.
Beautiful, incredible plotters. So basically, it was part of this show called The Armory, which was it's like a gigantic modern art show with like many of the biggest galleries having booths and exhibitions. Part of why I wanted to go is because I kind of figured that there would be a number of galleries with doing interesting NFT stuff, and it turned out that it really was only Cortese, Gallery Cortese, which is they're the folks who do C Verso stuff as well. So they had a 6 of 6, like 6 1-of-1s in a series from Zancan with a physical plotter with like, hand embellished stuff, all sort of themed around New York. 6 1-of-1s from Emily Shi of Offscript and Memories of Shilin fame. So she also had 6 1-of-1s with physical prints there.
I'm sorry, were these I saw some flower pick.
The flower thing was from a show in London. I think it's just one piece that was part of the unit London.
Being speculated about for it.
I think there was also a Maypan 1-of-1 as part of that, and I think Tyler also had a piece. Tyler Hobbs, and then Kovac had 4 1-of-1s. So he's Edifice and 100 print. And then there was a series that Rich Poole did that was in the like C Verso, out of 250, you could like mint and choose your traits and that sort of thing. And the Zancan pieces were incredible. It was 10K Tez, so not cheap, but kind of once it became clear that I had a shot at this, I sort of moved heaven and earth to make that happen, and was able to get a VIP pass from the gallery because of pieces I own from folks they were exhibiting, basically. And then it was like an IRL gas war, basically. Like I got there like an hour early for the VIP opening, and was just like standing at the front of the line for an hour. Bob Lucas, who is another collector in mostly on ETH. This is his first Tez purchases were a Zancan, one of these Zancans, and also he got one of Emily's pieces. And so like we have met at previous things, and like he got there around when I did, and then we both just stood in line for half an hour and were the first people to the gallery. Awesome. And that was that. Met Zancan, and it was awesome. He also he had these 4 editions of 100, one from each day of the show, the sort of Lush Temples New York series, and he gifted one of each of those editions to each of the in-person collectors too, which was
That's amazing.
Pretty swell of him.
I saw a lot of those guy on Twitter, and I didn't realize that there were editions at first, and I was confused as to how this many people on my timeline were able to afford these 1-of-1 Zancans until I realized that they were additions.
Yeah, it pretty quickly, I think, skyrockets to like the sort of the crown jewel along with my ringer of my collection in terms of things that I'm like least interested in selling ever unless I really, really have to for some reason.
Yeah. A 101 Zancan, that is very special.
Sure is. Now I want to talk about QQL for a little bit.
Go on, Jamie.
Have you thought about circle packing in flow fields?
No, I actually don't have any follow up to that joke. So whatever you guys want to move on to is fine.
Well, maybe let's talk about NFTs for charity a little more. The initiative.
Yeah. It's not NFTs for charity, by the way, right? It's crypto charity.
Well, so we have
a specific thing that you did recently, but the bigger thing is different.
Yeah. Well, okay, so let's talk about the specific thing on Tez. I believe by the time this goes out, because there's 18 hours now left on the auctions, they'll probably be finished already by then. Is this a one-off thing?
Maybe our very first downloader will be able to make a last-second bid. That's about it.
Yeah.
This is mostly, there are a couple people who I think maybe are continuing to send something in. But so that there may be a little bit more sort of right now. It's something that I intend to do again. Like, I think there's kind of, it's like, it's this interesting balance of like, how often do you want to try and push that button and ask people to be generous, right? It's like not something I want to do every week, but also it's like, I don't know, maybe once a quarter is a reasonable amount of time. It's like, bad shit happens in the world a lot.
Ultimately,
right?
There's always a need. And
so
yeah, find that balance.
Exactly. And so I think this also acts as like a bit of a proof of concept for folks, I imagine. And like, this will go well, and then we'll be able to say, here, X thousand Tez was donated to these 3 charities, and this is what they did with it. And that sort of thing is also helpful just in terms of sort of closing the loop with everyone. And I'm hopeful that we can do more. We can also do at any time, folks can donate an NFT to charity, and we can, auction it and then sell it. It's also the case that you can just sell it yourself and then donate the proceeds if you're so inclined. There are potentially tax benefits to donating it directly first. Basically, there's like, for American taxpayers, and it's like a big caveat that we're talking primarily here about American taxpayers, whether you're talking about a crypto coin or an NFT, in either event, you're talking about a non-cash asset. And in that, with a non-cash asset, if it's an asset that you have held for more than 1 year and has gone up in value, it is tax advantaged for you to donate it directly rather than selling it to cash and then donating the cash. And that's because if you can donate it directly, you don't have to pay any capital gains tax on the appreciation, right? So the easiest example is like, let's say you have $100 of Bitcoin for which you paid $10 back in 2016. If you have $100 of cash, you can donate it and get a tax deduction for that $100. If you donate the $100 of Bitcoin directly as Bitcoin, you can get the same $100 of tax deduction, but you never have to pay any capital gains tax on the appreciation. So actually the thing you should do in that scenario where you have $100 cash and $100 of Bitcoin, donate the Bitcoin and then buy $100 of Bitcoin.
Now, what if
you reset your
US
cost basis?
Federal government is going to use your money better than a charity? What if you're ridiculous and you believe that? Then you might want to do the other thing.
Sure. Yeah. If you're interested, I mean, the government will always be happy to take more money.
Yes.
If you would like to give it to them.
Please help them out. They have so
little. Exactly. poor Uncle Sam. And so, for NFTs though, it's interesting, like on Tez, that's not really a concern. Like not one person has asked me for like a tax receipt or whatever, right? It's like, cool, use this and it'll be great. I don't care about the $45 tax deduction I'm going to get for the piece I gave you, and that's one other interesting sort of differential with ETH. But yeah, I could definitely see this happening. It's something that we're able to do kind of whenever. And so it's also something where like, if someone would like to organize something, we can easily provide the backbone for that. And, the infrastructure to accept it and to run the auctions and blah, blah, blah. It's pretty trivial, as you all know, to like spin up an additional wallet and attach a different Tez domain or whatever. And then like you have something that's kind of identifiable as, send it here. Which has been good. And I'm sort of excited about the potential for it. It's also the case that like, if you think about that NFT donor tax piece, right? And obviously saving on taxes is like only one reason why someone might wish to donate. There's also just like the doing good. There's it's easier to donate in crypto. Yeah. There's it's easier to donate in crypto in many cases if you've already got it. It's also cheaper, right? So there's zero fees that we charge at all for processing the donation. And so if you donate with a credit card, that you lose 3%. The nonprofit doesn't get 3% of it, right? Because that goes to Stripe or PayPal or whomever.
Yeah.
But they actually get all of it from us, except for like the tiny slice Gemini takes out or whatever. But like on the NFT donations in particular, it's interesting to think, at least I find interesting to think about how like in April of this year, when I started working at Crypto for Charity, there were not that many people who had held an NFT for more than a year that had appreciated in value. There were some. There were like punk holders and like autoglyphs holders and like a couple other things, but not that many, right? And in the intervening 6 months, there are a ton more people that applies to. And over time, that slice of people is only going to grow. And so I think it's interesting to like, can that become a growing sector and something people take advantage of more?
Yeah, I mean that makes so much sense, and I think on the piece of having people not have held it for a year by April, my entire plan and strategy for selling NFTs was to wait the year and not pay full capital gains tax here in Germany, and it just so happened that the year started in like April, May, as everything started crashing, and I was like, probably should have just sold, but here we are. Yeah. A lot of people in the same boat.
There's someone who is in process of, and I have permission from them to say that it's happening, though not to give specifics just yet, but who is going to be donating a CryptoPunk to a charity that we work with.
That's awesome.
And their hope is that they can help to kind of inspire someone who holds quite a few, and their hope is that it's something that can inspire other punk holders. Because like if you imagine the sort of archetypal person who minted 20 punks and has just sat on them, they could like donate one a year and just mitigate their first 300K of taxes or whatever, right? Like,
yeah,
you can have this kind of like find a charity you like and want to support, and you're great, right? And it's just like a great way to support them and to substantially minimize your tax bill and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah. So, sometimes on this podcast, Roy and I will also talk about the general sort of friction between the crypto community and the existing power structures that are sort of threatened by it, governments and banks and stuff like that. And I think these sorts of initiatives are important to, put a positive narrative on top of crypto that is undeniable, because obviously there's, in our minds at least, right, value to the decentralization and all of that type of stuff. But some people don't buy into that argument or aren't interested in listening to it, or can dismiss it with other stuff about how it's just, larger fool theory and people just getting rich and then trying to sell it to you later or whatever. But if we can have organization to do actual good in the real world, people will start to have some level of shifting opinions in a good way that I think the space needs.
Absolutely. I mean, there's, in my mind, in terms of like, why do people give right now? I think why give with crypto, right? It's like, if you've already made the decision that you want to support a charity or that you want to do some good with your money, right? There's the sort of ease of use and low transaction fee and all that. And I should specify on the like mild shill department that like we are the only zero fee platform. So like make your donations with us. also, but more, but yeah, the convenience factor is there sort of with some competitors as well. The and then there's the the tax benefit piece, which is applicable to some slice of people, but certainly not something like 40% of our donors are from outside of the U.S. And that doesn't. And then there's also a bunch who don't tell us where they live, but then there's very much what you were talking about, Jamie. It's like there's a lot of people who are making a statement by donating in crypto rather than donating in cash to a cause that's meaningful to them. It's letting the charity know, hey, you've got supporters who are like good people and normal people, and we have crypto, and like we care about you, right? And that helps to shift over time. Like it's little bits here and there, but I think there's definitely a real impetus and value in more people realizing that like we're just people. We're not super coders in the basement. We're just people,
I can give like a real example that happened to me where about, I think it was late last year, earlier this year, I donated to a charity in crypto, and it was significant. It was like 10 ETH or 20 ETH. It was after like my big like NFT sale and stuff. And they reached out a while back saying, are you interested in talking to a reporter who's doing a story on people donating via crypto just to help spread that narrative? And so there's definitely people out there wanting to showcase crypto in a better light in traditional media. It's just, it's an uphill battle at the moment, but we got to fight the good fight.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, there has already been a huge change, though, just in terms of whether or not it's like, I mean, CNBC talks about Ethereum and Bitcoin prices and NFTs like all the time now, whereas it was just nonsense to everything, 3 years ago or whatever. So there is change in terms of acceptance, but there's a lot of people that don't give a fuck what CNBC is saying because they have, less financialized interests in the world and stuff like that. And so in order to get people like that to think that this is not just a stupid playground for the rich or whatever their misconceptions may be, this is a good thing for that.
Silly Ponzi, I think, is the
That's one of them. Yeah. I mean, certainly boiling the oceans was also a popular narrative.
Yeah. It was.
That still applies to Bitcoin, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, it's just a question of, is it worth it?
Yeah. Right. The pros and cons, right?
Like it's, I mean, to me, cause I mean, I've had lots of conversations with, friends who are somewhat baffled by my turn into crypto, given my past work.
Yes.
And, to me, it's like humanity makes all sorts of decisions about things that we want, that we think it's worth spending energy on. Right. And so if you think it's all a idiotic Ponzi of fake money that doesn't fucking matter, then like, yeah, of course it's a bad use of energy. If you think it's a useful tool for human freedom and necessary bulwark against centralized power and et cetera, then like maybe it's a good use of energy, and you can kind of exist anywhere on that spectrum. But the like it uses energy ipso facto it's bad is like pretty silly.
It's that opinion is attached to the supposition that there's also not anything of value that the energy is being used for the most part.
Totally.
I have a question about crypto for charity. Just in terms of the charities, like let's say someone wants to donate. Do you have a list of charities that you work with? Can they donate to any charity? Like, what's the process like?
Yeah. So the way that it works is any like US 501c3 public charity. I feel like I may be missing one word in that sentence, but like basically anything that you'd think of as like a public interest oriented charity. So your food bank, your animal shelter, your environmental nonprofit, your church, your university, those are all sort of enabled on the platform. There are approximately 55,000 that currently are available just in our dropdown. And there
That's a
are
lot of scrolling.
that's well, you can search. It's mostly it's basically scraped from like the 55,000 biggest by revenue from GuideStar or something like that, and then there's a bunch of additional ones that have been added on request. And it's very easy if anyone wants to donate to something that's not in that list, but that has a valid taxpayer number and is a 501c3. We can just add it very easily. You can pull it in with the tax number. And then additionally, we have 20 or so what we call cause funds, which is like 8 environmental conservation nonprofits or 4 reproductive rights organizations or, however many veterans and military groups or a housing and hunger fund, whatever. So that's for like, sort of to Jamie's point, like you get there and you're like, what the fuck? You can just say, cool, I want to support gun safety, the people fighting for gun control stuff. So I'll donate to the gun safety cause fund, and then the donation will be split across those organizations. So we are, the Giving Block is the main, sort of the biggest player in the space. And they are kind of, they cover the bases really well. Like they're out there a lot. They put out some really nice resources. Like they have put out a really nice 40-page report on NFT giving and stuff. They have their transaction fee tends to be between 3 and 5% on donations, which is pretty obfuscated. Like it's kind of hard to find that on the website that exists. And nonprofits have to pay them to be listed on their site. And so their actual choice of places to donate tends to be smaller, especially for US nonprofits in particular. They have some international charities, which we do not yet, just because of the tax status and sort of where we are in our growth. And so the way it works is, so Crypto for Charity is part of a company called Free Will, which is actually a website where you can make a legal will for free. And you're prompted to leave a charitable bequest when you do so. And so it's kind of part of that whole, it's basically like a company that works on non-cash giving and helping nonprofits be able to get more of that. And so we have a nonprofit with which we work very closely called Free Will Impact Fund, which, as you can guess, we're deeply connected to. And so donations through Crypto for Charity are actually made initially to Free Will Impact Fund, which then issues tax receipts, owns the wallets, et cetera, and then Free Will Impact Fund acts as a donor advised fund, and then like grants out the funds to the organizations designated, right? And so what that means is that when you make a donation to the Hurricane Fiona Relief Fund, that is split across Taller Salud, which is a feminist group working in Puerto Rico and doing a ton of amazing on-the-ground relief work, as well as Global Giving and Direct Relief, who are doing sort of more regional stuff, and they have presences in other countries that are affected by the storm. And so, if you donate $100, if you donate $99 or 99 USDC, let's say, to the Hurricane Fiona Relief Effort Fund, basically each of those three, like we'll take that USDC, liquidate it to USD, and then send a $33 cash transfer to each of the 3 designated charities, which means that they don't need to know how to take crypto, right? There's no setup or management on their part. They're just getting a cash transfer from another 501c3, which is like,
so how are you guys
a very simplified thing
with the centralized exchange that you're liquidating with and their fees not eating into it, or how does that work?
So those will eat slightly in, right? So like Gemini and FTX are the 2 exchanges that we use, and there will, it's like a 0.25% kind of thing like that. So so that gets taken because that's not us, but it's like we don't take any fees out of it.
Right.
And then basically whatever, like we'll send to Gemini, like, hey, convert these 3 ETH into USD, and then the USD that we get out will get transferred.
Okay.
And then the obvious follow-on question is like, so if you don't charge any fees, how do you make money? Why are you a business? And basically it's like, it's tied into the other stuff we do with the Will product. and acts as a kind of value enhancer for other organizations. And then additionally, we can do custom work. So some partners have standalone crypto donation pages that like they link to directly. And there's sort of other ways in which we're working with and like, essentially consulting to monetize a bit. But it's largely like, how can we add value for clients who are working with us on the will side? And it's like, help them get some money from crypto.
So, okay,
donors.
so where would the best place to go be for, say, we have a listener that wants to donate through this website?
Yeah, so cryptoforcharity.io, like literally just those
F-O-R
words.
Or the number 4?
F-O-R.
Okay.
Forcharity.io is the great place to start. We're also on Twitter. We have a support Discord. It's not like a active community or something, but you can pop in there and ask questions. You can also find me on Twitter, 0x SimonSays. I'm happy to be a resource.
As your,
I do. I have a nice ribbed. Yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty straightforward. Basically, the process is like decide where you want to donate and how much, and we just give you we then generate a wallet address that you then donate to, and that's it. You tell us if you want a tax receipt. There's also a whole, in addition, so we've talked about like donating NFTs. There's donating crypto in any of whatever 79, 80 coins. The other thing that we have that has a ton of potential and that we've done some of is providing addresses for to integrate directly into smart contracts for NFT launches, right? So for primary or secondary royalties. And so that's like, we have a process to generate that very easily. There's like an NFTs nav item in the nav that you can go to donate drop proceeds and it's there. Also happy to provide direct support and kind of handhold a little bit for folks who want to get in on that. We're also sort of in conversation a bit with fxhash about trying to integrate into the project setup flow to just make it more easily, and with other platforms as well. We're really keen to try and integrate with, but obviously like, changes to product take time for folks to agree to. And we're now in the like Artblocks artist onboarding flow as well. So in a couple weeks there will be the first Artblocks drop that uses one of our wallets, which is exciting.
That's awesome.
And it's like integrating there in various ways is basically what I'm doing every day, is like trying to figure out how can we get in front of more people, and also how can people be using us without even knowing they're using us, right? Yeah. Like you mint on an Artblocks drop, like it doesn't matter to you that
how it's
Crypto for Charity wallet powering it, but it's like,
I have an idea that might, maybe you're already looking into it, but there's a lot of these like no code platforms coming out for releasing NFTs, and it seems to me like it might be just perfect integration where someone's signing up, like doing an NFT launch, and they can just click a button and be like, hey, we want to donate 10%, and all the code is done immediately in the back end. So I don't know if
I would love to have that happen.
I can connect you to a few people building those. So
awesome. That'd be fantastic.
And the other question I was going to ask is, how does this all relate to QQL? Because
what's going on here?
That is a good question. I'm not sure if there's a charitable component. But hopefully it will generate a boatload of money for Tyler and Dandy, and they will direct it through us somewhere good.
Do you want to do a game of what am I thinking before we head out, or
let's do that. Oh, we got to mention,
do you do it with 3 people though?
I don't know.
It's just harder.
How about the two of you do it, and I'll
okay.
You know how to play, Simon? You've listened?
I do. I've listened.
All right.
Okay, I've got a word.
As do I.
Roy, you can do the 3, 2,
I'll do the
1
countdown. 3, 2, 1.
Elephant.
Pizza.
Elephant and what?
Pizza.
Pizza
and elephant.
Sorry, it was long. I thought you were going to close it with the conversation about taking pizza. Okay, me too.
All right. 3, 2, 1.
Fable.
Sausage
and fable. The thing I was thinking of is not even a fable. It's just how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time?
Oh, okay. I was like, how did you get
it's
Fable
not
from
actually a
Elephant?
Fable, so it's not that great.
I thought you were going like a sort of, I think of like Lord of the
Elephant
Rings or
sausage?
other like big. I don't know. I thought we were going to like,
All right, Fable and
I'm
sausage.
sure it'd be pretty gamey.
Fable and
All right.
sausage. I have nothing.
All right.
This is a tough one.
Sorry, this might be the. I don't know what your worst has been.
Oh, we did one that we went for like
We
10 or 12.
Roy's
Okay.
ruined so many.
Jamie is awful.
Okay, I got to work.
All
I
right.
guess I'll just use
All right, as do I.
3, 2, 1.
Aesop.
Menu.
Aesop.
Okay.
Menu and Aesop.
Okay. I was thinking like, we're like
You're thinking
the
very
story
much
of the meal.
food, Simon, and Jamie is very much
Abstract.
abstract.
Yeah.
All right, I'll make the jump. I'll make the leap over.
Aesop and menu. Jesus.
Oh, I got it. I know what it is. It's obvious.
Is it?
Yes.
I'm all right. I got to.
Let's see if you get it. You ready, Simon?
Sure.
3, 2, 1.
Leopard.
Story.
Leopard and story. Okay.
Uh-huh.
I've got a word that I think I can put between those two.
Okay.
All right. 3, 2, 1.
Spots.
Book.
Oh god damn it! How does the
Spots.
leopard
Oh,
get
yes.
spots?
Book is the one that I was going to say between Menu and Aesop.
Okay. I officially concede because I really do have to go too much.
Sorry.
All
All right, we call Jamie the loser.
Cool.
I got to quickly mention the giveaway winners for the last 2 episodes, or the previous
Yes.
one. The winners from episode 50 are at Snack Jackson and at Crypto Ape 101. The winners from episode 51 at Pin Pusher, at 416 Ash, and at Nachis.
This was maybe the cherry tomatoes in a cup or something.
What are
was
you
one of
talking
them.
about? Oh,
We
right.
had- The giveaway, the thing you're talking about.
Thank you, Simon. Yeah, this has been a wonderful episode. We'll have links to Crypto for Charity, NFTs for Charity, your Twitter, their Twitter, everything in the show notes below. And
All
it's
the
been a
good
pleasure.
stuff.
Awesome.
Yeah,
thanks you
thanks
guys.
for coming on.
This is great.
Thank you.
Thanks
It
for
was my
listening,
pleasure.
everyone.